And this gets to one of the other, I guess, the broader implicit uncomfortable truths is that we value different people differently. So, and that this, of course, applies in the mating domain of mate value. Some are high and some are low. And that's mostly what I've focused on, but it also applies to friendship value, coalitional value, that we value different individuals differently based on their competence, based on their benefit conferring ability and willingness. And people find this uncomfortable. They, you know, we're, and this is one of the, I think, conceptual confusions of this, like, all people are created equal. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, there are different meanings of that. One is equal in terms of rights, you know, which they should be, equal in terms of opportunities.
Equal before the law, equal in terms of their natural rights.
Right. Which is, I think, the correct usage of that. But are they actually equal in value, in what other people value? And the answer
well, I've always asked people like who hit me with that. It's like, do you sleep with everyone?
Right.
No. Oh, you're selective, are you? Well, isn't that oppression, exclusion, and judgment at the most fundamental level? And is that something you really want to sacrifice?
Yeah, and the answer is no. And I remember
the answer is only rude people ask questions like that.
Well, or you know, or confused, you know, who haven't really thought through these issues.
No, I meant the rude person was me asking that question.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, hey, we're in the business of asking hard questions. I don't think they're rude.
No, I don't think they are either. They're just pointed. It's like, wait, you exclude sexually. There is no more dramatic form of exclusion than that.
Yes, that's right. Well,
that's why people object to evolutionary psychology. It's like, there's a brutalness about it, especially in female choosiness. And not that men are any better, because of course they do the same thing in different ways, but it really is brutal. And to be rejected by someone that you're attracted to, that's no joke. That's a rough dagger.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, breakups are among the most traumatic experiences that people go through. You know, the dissolution of a marriage, for example. You know, these cause people to spiral into depression, alcohol abuse, etc. It's
so can we talk about differences in aggression again? You know, because as you said, men are more likely to use physical aggression. And by the way, there is good data. You may know this already, but Tremblay's group in particular looked at this. If you take 2-year-olds, boys and girls, and you group them together, 2-year-olds are the most aggressive of any age group that you can group together. Hitting, kicking, biting. The 2-year-olds will do more of it. But most 2-year-olds don't. And almost all the small minority that do are male. So it's there at 2. Now, almost all of them get socialized by the age of 4. And so they come to inhibit that aggression. They're probably low in agreeableness. That would be my guess. And some of them are probably high in negative emotion. So they're more reactive, you know, more volatile. But most of them are socialized by the age of 4. But their research group showed that if they aren't socialized by the age of 4, then it's permanent. So that's where the career criminal types come from. But they tend to desist around the age of 28. It drops off for some reason that isn't well understood yet.
Yeah. Well, I guess, 28. Well, you know, I mean, it seems like at least in adulthood, when physical aggression, if you chart it by age and sex, it's basically when males, even though they do exhibit it early on, as you mentioned, when they enter reproductive competition, the physical aggression goes way up. In the same data set. So what happens with these long-term aggressive boys? So they're more aggressive than the rest of the boys, except the boys catch up on average when puberty hits for a few years, and then they go down. So they enter
to your point.
Reproductive competition. And two other colleagues of yours up in Canada, Martin Daly and Margaret Wilson, have shown these age and sex distributions. And I mean, it's really stark.
And the exacerbation of that by inequality.
Yes, that's right. Which is another issue. You know, the magnitude of inequality and inequality leveling Richard Wrangham has an interesting idea that one of the ways, like, it gets back to the issue of the origins of monogamy, that in humans, and this is to a lesser degree the case in chimps, I think, but it's certainly true in humans, that an alpha male can be deposed by two lower ranking males, two or three who gang up. And his view is that if someone gets to the top and is a cost-inflicting male, he didn't quite phrase it this way, then people gang up and kill him.
Right. Another argument against totalitarian brutality as the basis of the patriarchy. It actually doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. And for that reason, I actually talked to Wrangham about exactly that. So those mechanisms are already there. And so aggression, a lot of these strategies that you outline in your book as alternatives in some sense to monogamy, to stable monogamy, I would say there's something like suboptimal solutions on a fitness landscape, right? They're better than the alternative, possibly, which would be like zero success whatsoever, but they're nowhere near as good as the optimal solution, which is something like generous monogamy, something like that, perhaps. Is that naive or reasonable, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I tend to, I have a little bit of an internal conflict on that issue, because I sort of, as a scientist, I feel like I have to be non-judgmental with respect to if there are multiple evolved mating strategies, which I think there are. I try to be non-judgmental about that. But from my own personal ethical viewpoint, I think monogamy is a great solution. I mean, among other things. Well,
you think it might be possible to rank order to some degree scientifically, to keep it in line with, like, let's call it ethical intuitions, assuming they're just not artificial constructions, because it could be that partial solutions are better than none, but they're nowhere near as good as an optimized solution. And so, like, long-term monogamy might be something like the best strategy, all things considered. Now, sometimes all things aren't considered, and you have to do what you have to do, let's say. Divorce would fit into that and so forth. But that doesn't mean that optimality that we have potentially a moral intuition for isn't pointing to something that is, in fact, well, I would say, at least in potential, evolved as well as socially constructed.
Yeah, so I guess what I would say is that the key question is optimal for whom? And this is where you get into some conflict between sort of group harmony and individual benefits. So in polygynous societies, as we were talking about earlier, let's say you have one man has 4 wives, that means 3 men have no wives. So having the 4 wives from a purely reproductive standpoint might be optimal for that individual male, but it's of course suboptimal, disastrously suboptimal for the 3 males who have 0 mates.
But he also might be more prone. We know the polygynous societies, they tend to be more violent. The younger men tend to be more violent. So I would say that, he's on top, but a knife in the back takes out the strongest man. And that's a real problem in human beings, because even if it is physical prowess that puts you up at the top, which is something that a real dominating chimp might manage, knives pretty much equalize the playing field, or clubs or anything like that. So.
Yeah, and I think we have these kind of hierarchy leveling adaptations, and if you go across cultures, they even have phrases for us. Like in Australia, they have they call it the tall poppy syndrome. Mm-hmm. People like to cut down tall poppies. Or in Japan, they say the nail that sticks out gets pounded down. And so there's this, and in personality psychology, I don't know if you remember like R.B. Cattell even had a concept, Raymond Cattell had a concept called coercion toward the biosocial norm, where he said that people like to cut down people who are too dominant so that the meek will inherit the earth. So it's not quite right, but it's, I think we do have these.
Well, I also think that cutting down, that's an interesting thing as well.